most introductions for our new members, so you're up next.
Well, right on time, 2 minutes late. Hi, I'm Joel White. I have lived in Superior, I think 7.5 years now. I moved to Colorado 15 or 16 years ago from Oklahoma, and you can't drag me back there if you tried. I live near the Superior Elementary North Pool. I've been on the Open Space Committee, I think 4.5, 5 years. Tracy and I are right in there. I think she's got me edged out a little bit, but spent a lot of time outside. I have 2 kids, the world's largest black lab, and spent a lot of time in Superior and Boulder County open space. And I avid cyclist, mountain biker, and work with Boulder Mountain Bike Patrol and do some trail building and trail maintenance activities with various county and Forest Service organizations when time permits.
Thanks, Joel. Allison, would you go next, please?
Sure. I'm Allison James. I'm town staff. Thank you so much, new members, for getting us your paperwork turned in. And I've been with the town over 6 years. Mostly on the Open Space Advisory Committee as a staff liaison, but also with our Parks Rec Open Space and Trails Advisory Committee, the inception of our Cultural Arts and Place Public Spaces Advisory Committee, and, you know, all around project management, data analysis, and I manage our wildlife contract with our wildlife ecologist.
Thank you. Trustee Lasis.
Hey everyone, I am Mark Lasis. I am on the Board of Trustees currently, up until the election. It all depends on what happens on November 3rd as to whether I'll still be here. I was the OSAC liaison previously, maybe about 2-3 years ago, and then Sandy Hammerly was the OSAC liaison for the past 1.5 years. She resigned. I was the backup, so now I am back, and OSAC is stuck with me for the next month.
Thank you, Mark. All right, Kara, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Kara Noisy. I'm retired military, and I actually lived here 20 years ago. I had an assignment and then lived here for 3 years and then had to move. But I always said that I was going to come back because of just how amazing Superior is. I'm very passionate about the trails and the systems that we have here in place. And so I moved back here 2 years ago with my family to start our new chapter. And, you know, as far as OSAC, it just seemed to be the ideal next step for me because, again, I am very passionate about the trails and have tremendous respect for the work that you all have done to make sure that it is consistently moving in the right direction so that we can preserve what makes this place so incredibly unique. So I'm thrilled to be a part of the team and excited about learning all about a lot of the projects that you have ongoing so I can provide some perspective and contribute to the community that I love so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And
Yeah. Hi, Tracy Bain. Very excited to be here as well. I've actually been a 23-year resident of Superior.
wow.
For a long time. Day job is tech marketing, so that keeps me pretty busy, but I'm very excited to work on some other things. I find the charter and the things that you guys are working on very interesting. Joel, you talked about mountain biking and hiking and all those things. That's sort of my wheelhouse as well. And we also live near you, so we'll have to, I'll look for your big black lab when we're out walking the dogs. So, yeah, my motivation to join was very much around just protecting the open space. You know, Ryan, you talked about being a runner out on the open spaces, and that's very important to me as well. I don't want to see it all get built up. I'm very passionate about keeping some of the true open space that we have and keeping it natural and helping to protect the habitat. So yeah, very excited to be here and look through all the plans and things. And it's nice to be getting involved here right before the new year. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Great. Well, thank you all and welcome. The next agenda item is the agenda approval. Are there any corrections anyone would like to make to the agenda?
I have a couple questions, Ryan. I wanted to get an update from Allison on the grant applications as well as the budget request that we had for Orman Roche to the town board. And I don't see where that is anywhere on the,
Yeah, I was going to make the same, that I did
Okay.
not put a budget update on the updates and look ahead.
okay.
Allison, is that something you would be able to provide? I mean, it's last minute, so I don't know if if is the budget done, and if the budget is done, if the OSAC ask had been approved or not. I mean, we don't need an answer, but I don't know if that's something you can dig up in a short order, or
I actually do not think that that budget item was approved if it was finalized. But Mark, do you know if it was finalized?
So we did finalize the budget. I had asked previously at one of the budget meetings about, the status of the OSAC asks, and what I was told was that everything that OSAC had asked for was in the budget. But if I was mistaken, so I could go look in the budget and let you know kind of for sure. So what specifically was it that we were asking for? How much?
I think 25K was the max of it. It was like 15 to 25K, and anyone correct me if I'm
And it was for Orman Roche
Yes.
improvements.
Yes. Yep.
Yes.
All right, give me a second. I'll do
Okay.
a little digging.
Okay,
so
thanks.
while Mark's doing that, I do think we should amend the agenda for updates and look ahead for those two items. Yeah, Frank.
We got an email a week or two ago from Debbie Yates on the Superior Art Mobility Path, and I didn't know if we should all jump in on that or not. I didn't know if we should discuss that or not. So
I thought we had 2 members sign up for that already.
I saw a few people. I just looked. I was a little late to the game. I saw a few people filled out the doodle poll, but I wasn't sure. It looked like it was an invitation for everybody. Anyway, I wasn't sure if there was something there for us to discuss. Right.
Yeah, I'm not really sure there is, because I think we need to get into those meetings.
Okay.
Because I actually don't know what we would discuss. They're not here. So I think that we'll learn more as we get into the meetings with them. So I would say, because we have a full agenda, I would like to hold off, but I could be persuaded otherwise.
I guess maybe just real quickly then, should we just all sign up? Or is it
Well,
just-
we were supposed to do it by last Friday, I think.
Okay.
So my understanding was we signed up for what times we could, and I think I signed up for my spots that I was available. But I didn't think it was an inclusive thing, like the first 2 to sign up would be. I think it was everybody, right?
You're right. It wasn't. They didn't give us one day, right? We'd still have time to sign up. So I think we should add that. I mean, we should add all these to the update and look ahead, so it's part of the minutes. So
Brian, I have one more thing.
Okay.
I had emailed you about wanting to talk about next steps for acquisition, and specifically Zaharias, and that will be fast. I just don't see where it fits in here.
That's 5D, because it was about financing.
Perfect.
That's what
All right,
that
I'll
item
talk about
is.
it then. Great, thanks.
Yep. Okay. So we want to add 3 items to the update and look ahead: the budget, the status of the grant applications, and the CAPS art walk process. So if someone could make a motion, please.
Motion to approve the amended agenda.
Get a second.
I second that.
Okay, all in favor? I guess we'll just raise our hands. Anyone opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Okay, so when we get to that section, we'll get into those items. So to start off tonight, we have Peter Ruprecht here to talk us through the 2020 Raptor Volunteer Report. For our new members, I will try to just interject real quickly what each one of these items is. If you're not sure, please feel free to ask questions. If you feel like we're going too fast and you're not, you don't want to ask tonight, please feel free to email afterwards, and I'll be glad to fill you in on, or other members can fill you in. So just whatever you're comfortable with. So we sponsor a group of volunteers within town that focus on monitoring the raptors that are in town. There are, Peter can tell me the exact number, but I think there's upwards of about 10 members that track these nests and the number of offspring that come out of these nests and help us with some recommendations on how we can continue to encourage that class of wildlife within our town. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Peter. So Peter, I have the document here, so if you'd like me to share it, just let me know what you'd like to do. Peter, you might be on mute.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yeah, hey Peter, good evening,
Great.
welcome.
Hey, cool picture, thanks.
Yeah, it is.
So thanks Ryan and everyone. Again, my name is Peter Ruprecht and I was the coordinator for this year's Superior Raptor Monitoring Program. And I just want to start by saying how grateful I am for OSAC's ongoing support of the citizen science program like this, including your help with publicity and recruiting, and especially for that very generous equipment grant this year. And also to Frank for being a really responsive liaison for me. That's super helpful, thanks.
And can I interject that I have some packages for you, Peter?
Oh, well, that's even better. So I'm going to add to my thanks to Allison for handling the purchase of a couple of new spotting scopes and tripods and some guidebooks that will be available to the volunteer monitors for the coming season. So I think that's going to make a really big difference for some of the folks to have advanced equipment like that. So Ryan's got the picture of the summary report up for last year's observations. And I thought I would just highlight a few results from that and give a quick look ahead to the upcoming monitoring season. I don't know, it's probably like 3 minutes worth of me talking. You guys can ask questions while I'm going if you want, or wait till the end, whatever works good for you.
Sounds good, Peter, thanks.
Cool. So anyway, in 2019 and 2020, we had 12 volunteers who submitted a total of about 200 observation reports. And altogether, we were able to identify 14 different raptor species. That's a pretty big number, actually, and it represents nearly all the diurnal raptors that we expect to see in the plains of Boulder County. So it's really great that we have chunks of open space within town and in a lot of the immediate surrounding areas, because without these undeveloped spaces, we would just have much fewer raptors. Most of the species that we observed are transient, which is to say that they fly through or they hunt here occasionally. And we can't really say that they live in Superior, but some species are found more frequently. And we found that 4 had successfully nested this year. We located and monitored 14 different nests, all but one of which fledged young. And by fledged, I mean the young left the nest successfully. 2 of these nesting species, which are great horned owls and Cooper's hawks, can thrive in a suburban setting. And those are almost certainly more common here than they were, say, 30 years ago. The other 2 nesters, which are red-tailed hawks and American kestrels, are also pretty open-minded about living near people. But since they nest mainly in very large mature trees, they have somewhat more limited options in town. Right now it's kind of a lull in the monitoring calendar for the year, but some hawks and owls will begin setting up territories and really even starting courtship soon. So next month we'll be gearing up to start observing again. I think I'm gonna try and be a little bit more formal with training this year and do a raptor identification seminar, which will probably have to be over Zoom. And also to continue with the one-on-one field orientations for new volunteers. And of course, I'm happy to go out and look for raptors with really anybody. So if you know somebody you'd like to, or you would yourself, just give me a holler. I'm really pleased to report this year that a couple of local scout groups are interested in monitoring. Some of the scouts are already out in the field, and others will be joining for the upcoming season. And you know, there's always volunteer turnover from year to year, so it'll be necessary to do a little bit of additional recruiting before the end of the year. Let me wrap up by pointing out that the summary report includes a number of recommendations that are aimed at ensuring that Superior continues to support a healthy raptor population. One of the recommendations about retaining and encouraging mature native trees is something that OSAC has already acted on. And I really appreciate your advocacy for that over the last year. Another really important recommendation I want to point out involves discouraging the use of pesticides. I was really excited to see the last town newsletter had a blurb about minimizing pesticides around the house. Because consuming poisons through their prey, through their food chain, as well as other indirect effects, especially of rodenticides and insecticides, is a significant source of raptor mortality. I mean, it's a huge problem. A lot of governments are taking new actions to reduce unintentional poisonings, and I would hope that Superior might be willing to take additional steps as well. So again, thank you, you guys all for your support financially and otherwise. It's been a ton of fun working with the volunteers this year. I think we had a great season, and I'm definitely looking forward to next season too. So thanks.
Thank you, Peter. Again, impressive work. Really appreciate this. Love the pictures, but even more, I love the recommendations. Right, it helps us to stay focused on some of these issues that we maybe, wouldn't come in front of us. So I do appreciate that. Any questions from the group for Peter? Allison.
I have a quick question for you, Peter. When you do that raptor training, some of the things I've been working with our wildlife ecologist on is our virtual programming. And it would be really great if when you did that training, maybe you make a PowerPoint of slides. You can even do a voiceover recording. And just to have that material available for people that are interested in identification, I think it might be really cool to put up on our website with some of the other programs we have.
Sure, I've actually already got a PowerPoint. I think Frank's seen most of it already. And so if we can talk, let me know how it would be good to get that over to you, or to add some audio into it or whatever. I'd be absolutely delighted to have that out to help people.
Allison, I saw earlier this year, maybe a month or so ago, you guys sent out incredible insects. And I wanted to compliment whoever put that together. Ashley, it looks like. It looks really good.
Thanks. Yeah, we've been working on a lot of these together. I think we have 4, and we're finishing up on a how to haze coyote, same type of virtual program. It can just stay up. Right now you can access it through our different programming venues, but then I think we're going to try to have it in a static page somewhere in our on our wildlife page on our website.
Hey, Peter, I wanted to thank you for all your work. It's amazing. And I have one question for you and one for Allison or Ryan. What are your thoughts on the 3 species that you didn't see this year that you did see last year? Any concerns about that? And then I would love, Allison, an update on the recommendation we made to the board about the Plains cottonwoods and trying to preserve and promote those as best we can, and if anything has happened in regards to that since we made that recommendation. I don't know how long ago, 9 months or something like that.
So regarding the 3 owl species that we recorded last year, but not this year, that was the barn owl, burrowing owl, and eastern screech owl. I guess I wouldn't try and draw too much conclusion from just 2 years worth of data. Barn owls and burrowing owls are seen really only on the edge of town, and it would be kind of lucky to see one within the town boundaries. So I would guess that that's kind of an intermittent sort of thing to see. If we had barn owl nesting capabilities, they would definitely come into town. The eastern screech owls, we've been trying to attract with nest boxes. Unfortunately, there's construction nearby where those were installed, and I think that might be hopefully temporarily putting them off from nesting there.
Yeah, Tracy, I don't have an update on the trees.
Okay, and if you don't either, Allison, we can always discuss it next month too. I don't want to put you on the spot.
I'll check. I know we've planted over 100 trees recently, and I do know that some new trees have also been installed in and around Parks 1 and 2 around the creek. So I'll check to see how many. And I actually, one of the new ones that was put in, it had a tag on it. And I looked at it and it had cottonwood. But I don't remember if it was specifically plains or not. So I'll check with the superintendent on that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and Frank, go ahead, please.
Yes, it's slightly to the side of this. I was going to ask about the breeding study thing, Ryan, and whether or not we needed to make a decision about what to do with that report. But maybe we want to see if anyone had any questions on this report first. If there are any others.
My last question would be for the committee. What are we planning to do with the recommendations?
Yeah, it's sort of a segue, Tracy, into why I raised the other report as well, because it also includes some recommendations. And I think my driver there, putting the report on the website, I think is fantastic. It creates a public presence. Anybody can access it. But it's really those recommendations and how we as a committee help those see the light of day. I think that ultimately is the most important thing. So I think there's good recommendations in both reports, and I don't know exactly how we move those forward so that people who are in the know when it comes to operations are aware of them, and et cetera.
Yeah, and I'm not quite sure the right way to do that, right? I agree. There's good recommendations here. You know, one option would be to, I mean, we could just say we recommend that the town consider this, but it's very, I don't know if it's.
When this came out, we ended up taking that Plains Cottonwood recommendation. It was right as I joined, I remember, and we turned it into kind of an on-the-spot thing. And I don't remember what the thing was called. Is it a recommendation? Is it what is it we sent to the town?
Yeah, it was. Well, that's. I mean, that's all we can send, right? Or recommendations to the board. It's how we communicate, right? So I think that what I'm thinking we should do is that we should take this report and we should take the breeding bird survey and put it together into some other document that we recommend that the board pass on to town staff. And I don't know, pass on is not strong language, and I don't know what we would replace that with.
Well,
I mean, Allison,
could we ship it to the town and then one of us show up at a meeting and speak to it during comment or something?
I mean, we could, yeah, that's absolutely something we could do. We could request at a board meeting that we get a slot for, there's a slot on agendas for committee presentations that showing up and doing a few slides on, you know, I actually like that idea, Frank, that we could recommend, you know, put this into slide format and keep it simple, but say based on the work from our volunteers this work, these are the environmental pieces we would like to see enacted on through town business over the next year. I think would be a strong way to go, because it would be in front of the board, right? Rather than just another document or an email, right? We'd probably only need 5 minutes, you know, to present, and then some time for questions. But I like that approach.
Well, first of all, do others have thoughts on that? And
Yeah.
Second of all, I'm Brian, happy to help out on this. However you want.
Yeah, I had a couple. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Renner.
Oh, thank you. Quick comment on that. I agree it's a good idea to present this to the council with the ideas. When it comes to recommendations, I think it might be better that we make a very specific recommendation where the board can instruct the town what to do. that we very specific say we want A, B, C. Some of that may be money related, that some budget item has to be found, or others may be related that the town makes some new rules. So I think we should be specific. That's easier for the board to say yes or no to that.
Thinking through that, I agree that the more specific we can be. My issue there is that, like, let's just take the first one, discourage the usage of all rodenticides outdoors. To me, that would mean we would need to understand what is used and make a recommendation to replace that. Unfortunately, I'm not, it's not my job to understand those subtleties. So, would we work with maybe with Ashley to come up with specific changes that we could recommend from the town? I mean, I just like to use someone who this is their job and their expertise to understand these things, rather than I'm not saying we're not, we don't understand it, but it's not what we do every day, day in and day out. And we could do the research, but we would have to commit to that.
Yeah, I like that idea too. What comes to mind, though, is sort of using this initial opportunity to speak to the board as an educational one, and then trying to build on it. And each year we do this report, the data set gets bigger, the stories get stronger, the recommendations can also get stronger. I'm not sure if we come in the first time with too strong. I wouldn't come in too strong the first time.
Well, I didn't mean to come too strong. What I had in mind is after the presentation or at the same time, we could ask the board to direct the town or someone on staff to take a look and investigate what practical actions could be done. And with those, coming back to OSAC, where we would pick something we want to recommend.
Yeah, I like that approach, actually, is presenting what we found and then asking for resource to help dig in and understand what the town does and what could we do differently, I think is a really strong approach.
Yeah, I was going to jump in and say I like all the short-term approaches, getting this in front of the board, getting it a wider audience. I mean, I think anytime that we present something in the board meeting, we get more eyes on it, just because board meetings are more widely attended and watched than OSAC meetings. The other immediate thought I had is when I saw this recommendation list, when I read through this report, a week or two ago, was this really, to me, is something we need to prioritize into our work plan next year, because I think it's really great that we have, identified objectives from experts that we can really work forward on.
Yeah, good point, Joel. Thank you. Okay, so I see two action items. One is to prepare a several slide PowerPoint presentation. Frank, do you want to start, and then I'll help, or we'll circulate and get it wrapped up? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, and Peter, if you're still on, is this an area where you'd have interest in investing more time, or do you need to move on from this with the report being done?
I'm happy to help in whatever way would be useful to you.
Okay. Yeah, maybe you and I can follow up after sometime in the next week or so and come up with a plan. And
Terrific.
I think it'd be really good too to take the two sets of recommendations, mold them together, look for any inconsistencies or duplications, and come up with a single set. I think that was the other thing, Ryan?
Well, no, the other thing is just getting on the agenda at a board meeting. I'm not quite sure how we would do that. Allison, is that something you can help us with? Or do we need to make a recommendation for the board to allow us to present at an upcoming meeting on these type of issues?
All we would need to do, well, I think putting those two recommendations together, or this information together, we can have Ashley look at it. I can talk to the superintendent on what is currently being done for different items. And then with kind of both of their information and input on this, come up with the plan that the group would like to, present to the board. Then I need the presentation, and I write a cover memo for the packet, which typically is 2 weeks before the board meeting that the group would present at. So it's a pretty big window to have all of the information together and done to get it into the packet for the meeting. And it would be a copy of the presentation and the cover memo, which describes everything.
But I don't think there's any, like, we don't have to meet a certain date. Like, there doesn't seem to be, I mean, we want to get it done, but it's not like it has to be done even this year. But it does sound like we might need to make a recommendation tonight for the board to allow you to do that work. Do you think?
Well, I don't really see it as me doing a lot of work. I kind of see it as that document being put
Okay.
together, and then I kind of dole it out to the,
Okay.
and just ask for any input or information that they have on it. So
Okay.
I don't really think it's intensive.
Okay. So I don't think we need to make a recommendation, but we do have a decision that we'd like this to move forward with the goal of being a committee recommendation or a committee presentation to the board at an upcoming meeting. Does that seem to succinctly summarize what we're after here with this one?
I think so. So I think what I heard was we have to build the synthesis slide deck or whatever first. Then Allison shops it around to a couple of people in the town, while in parallel we get ready for a board presentation.
Yep. And, you know, not to add more work here, however, we might reach out to ACES because I think they're working on a plan to add more pollinators and have some other project that somewhat goes along with the insecticide piece of this. You know, maybe they've already done some work and we could just say, hey, you know, we're thinking about this from a different angle. You know, if you guys, you know, if you want to be involved or if you can provide some data, that's also, you know, good for us to be working with those other committees on things like this. So let's get it started, and that can be one of the ways we dole it out to just see if they have some information. And then we'll just
give you, oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead, please, Allison.
I could give you a quick piece of information on that as far as ACES. Our superintendent presented to ACES. They had questions and he came and gave them answers. And one of the outcomes from, you know, pollinators and insecticides was that our new landscape contract, which is just went through the bidding process. It hasn't been awarded, but in that contract is that we will not be using glyphosate any longer. So there are probably some overlapping issues like that, or good things, not really issues. But I think you're right.
Okay. Well, I think we have a plan. So we'll keep this on we'll put this in the stand or the updates and look aheads for future meetings just to see where we're at until we're ready to pull the trigger and get it on a meeting. So, well, Peter, thank you. I hopefully you like where we're going with these recommendations. I think this is maybe the strongest approach we've had to using the outcomes of these reports. So I feel like this is moving in a really good direction. Hope you agree.
I do. Thank you very much. I appreciate that help a lot.
Yeah, well, we really appreciate your effort and volunteering for the town in the manner that you do. So thank you very much. Have a good evening. Okay, moving on to 5B, trail in the Prost Master Plan. So Leslie emailed us and just said the consultants would like a subgroup of members to attend some meetings with the Prost Master Planners to work through, you know, they've seen our trail ranking, but they would like to get some insight into the process and other nuances about, you know, how we do it and why we do it the way they do, just to help them with any recommendations. So I think, Allison, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they'd like 2 or 3 people to volunteer to help work with the consultants. Is that correct?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay. So anybody want to volunteer? I mean, I'm happy to do it, but I also don't want to take it away from someone else who would like to fill in and talk to the consultants.
I'm always happy to volunteer. on anything trail related. I would need to kind of understand what the additional time constraints are. I'm in a very busy point in life and career. And so, if we're talking like a couple hours every week or two, not a huge deal, but just kind of like to understand a little bit about what the time requirements would be.
I don't know exactly. My thought originally was it was going to be a meeting to understand it. So it might just be one meeting to start.
And my understanding is after the ProStack meeting, then it's going to be some type of poll for the people that have volunteered to decide on a date for a Zoom meeting. So I don't think it's going to be a lot of meetings. I would say at the most 2, in my opinion.
Okay. So here's the thing. I don't want to put people on the spot. If you're interested, send me an email. And then we'll pull together the list. That way you don't have to sit here and feel guilty if you're not willing, if you don't want to sign up. So just let me know. Like I said, I'm happy to do it. I've done the trail rankings many times and familiar with the process. So it should be exciting though to work with the consultants again to help get that post master plan ranked or finished up. Okay, any other discussion on that topic? Okay. Well, let's get into the fun stuff then. So we get to review our trail ranking. So I just stopped sharing, but I need to share again. So thank you all for getting me the data. I'm not sure exactly how we want to do this, but here's how the data came out. When we look at, this is how the properties came ranked with the average rank over here. My initial look at this is that this hasn't really changed much from last year. Last year, Zaharias, Town 15, and CenturyLink were the top 3, and that was one of, if I recall right, one of the big takeaways we had in the report was that those 3 tended to be grouped near the top, and then the other 4 that we had were, more gathered near the bottom, which the distribution is not quite the same because Bulljack is, kind of right in the middle here. I mean, I would say that we've got 2 strong front runners and then the remainder. As a reminder, what we did was that we ranked and then we decided not to apply these weights. We just said it should be even. But down here, they're calculated with the weights. So if somebody said, really, I want to value flora and fauna way more than anything else, they could use this spreadsheet, type in those weights and see how the ranking might change. So based on that, I would like to is there what kind of discussion do we want to have around the ranking and the data?
I have a
Yeah,
question.
Frank, you've got a question. Sure, yeah.
You might expect.
Love your questions, Frank. Keep them coming.
So we have 5 properties in the list.
Yes.
As a question for Tracy in a minute, I'm real curious about that asterisk there. But before that, I'm curious about the 5 properties. Why are we ranking them and how will these rankings be used? And I ask that in part because 4 of the properties are not owned by the town and 1 is. And I was trying to think.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, right? Historically, this was used for a feeling for what we felt was the most valuable open space in the town. As we know, acquisitions don't normally go that way, meaning, well, I shouldn't say that. Because CenturyLink has been near the top for a long time, I would say that did help spur the board, and also Tracy, keeping this in mind to find these nonprofits to help us to keep that in the forefront of trying to acquire that specific property. So that was one purpose of this. The other purpose of it, we saw it play out with Town 15, that when there was a developer that was coming asking the town to sell them that land, that with the the board knowing where our position was on the value of that property as open spaced helped shape that conversation between the board and the potential developer.
So on that point, that's really helpful. Is Town 15 included because it's not zoned as open space? It's zoned otherwise?
It's included just because it could potentially be open space someday. It's not developed, and yes, it's town owned, but we keep it on there for that reason, that we want it in our, just
So it's
on our
really,
minds.
it's really the places that have the potential to be open space. It's not about ranking the places that are already considered open space in the town.
Correct.
The town
Yes,
could
these-
also sell that parcel to another party if we wanted to. Like, say, if we wanted to raise money to do something else, in theory, we could sell that, and then somebody could do with it, as they please. So
That really helps me, Ryan. Thank you. I am curious why there's the one score missing for Zaharias from Tracy, but beyond that, I think that the data seems pretty sound to me.
And I'll
oh
answer
yeah.
that, Frank. And parcels can be added with time too, which has happened in my years on the board. So, keep that in mind. We didn't always have Ridge 2, if I'm recalling right. That wasn't always on our list when I first joined. And now that is not technically open space, but it is acquired by the town and hopefully will not be developed. So, it's kind of an evolving list and an evolving process. And as far as Town 15 with my ranking, I abstain from ranking because I live next to that parcel and I don't want it to be a conflict of interest misconstrued there. And I've always abstained from ranking that parcel.
Yep.
Cool. Thank you for that.
But like Tracy was saying, right, this Third Avenue property, we just added that last year because there were some homes that were removed, the land was sold, subdivided, and then there was a lot that came available on the backside of that bridged the river. And we don't know, right now we've asked and there isn't much interest in acquiring that land, partially because from what I've heard is that it's still Boulder County. And so, and the way it's near the river, that developing it could be difficult to get approvals, but it keeps it on our radar. And, the same thing with the 76th Street parcels, right? These ones are just something for us to keep our eye out on, right? These ones actually have homes on them. And the price tag for the property with home would far exceed the per acre rate that we historically have paid, or the town has paid for other properties. However, we just like to keep them there because who knows if something might change, right? We might drive behind Costco and see a for sale sign on one of those. And then maybe at that point, we would start thinking about, do we have funds and do we think that this would make a good trail connector off into the trail system off there if we own that land or other things. So it's really just to keep it on our radar, really. And I think that, we go back and forth on should we be ranking properties every year, but I think my point of view is that yes, because even if we don't have, whatever the situation is, and we know funds are going to be tight, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but just keeping an eye out for what property we potentially could be looking to do something with is important, and it's the charter of this committee, and so that's also why we do this.
Yeah, I'm pretty supportive of that, Ryan. I think it's valuable, and I think its value. I think I'm understanding more about its value the more that we talk about it. The one thing that kind of surprised me in doing the rankings for myself was I expected I was going to get on my bike and have to go all over town, and I actually didn't. I didn't have to leave my desk based on the criteria and the paperwork and a map. I think I was able to just score everything based on the criteria. So anyway, I'm very supportive of where we are this year. For next year, I might have some suggestions I might like to share in advance of doing this next year, but I don't have any issues right now. I think it looks great. Thanks for putting it all together.
I mean, we are down to 5 properties. I mean, even 2 years ago when we did this, I think we had 10 or 11. I mean, a lot of property has come off this list when we see how much is being developed in town. Obviously with CenturyLink being purchased, which is huge. I mean, I can't even state how huge of a win that was for our town and this committee. But here we are. So do people want to, I mean, are there quite, historic, sometimes we go through and we could talk about each property and why we ranked it a certain way. I've done that a lot, and I don't know how much I get out of that. I mean, but I'm open to whatever the group would like to do on feeling comfortable with these rankings.
I have a question, Ryan.
Yeah.
You instructed us not to rank Ridge 2, and now you said this is actually owned by the town. Wouldn't it be falling the same category as Town 15 then?
Well, no, we didn't rank, not Ridge 2, but Rogers.
Oh, okay.
Because that got approved for a development. So a private, that is going to be built. That's why we, that has zero potential to be open space any longer.
So why didn't we rank Ridge 2 then?
Well, Ridge 2 is owned by the town, and
So
it
is Town
wasn't.
15.
Yeah, but in my mind, it wasn't purchased with open space dollars. It was purchased with general fund dollars for the specific purpose of expanding utilities if and when needed for the town.
Okay.
So that is why we took it off the list. We could discuss next year of putting it back on the list. It was on the list for many years. And that's a good point, Rainer, right? Why is that one town owned and not on our list when Town 15 was? I mean, Ridge 2, I think historically always ranked near the bottom because it was we felt like it would be a difficult piece of land to commercially developed because of the ridge, how steep it was and whatnot. So I think that's how we got here, but I think that that's a really good point that next year we could consider putting it back on there just to keep it in our minds because, like Trustee Lasis said, the town owns that and it could be sold. Well, I assume it's in the same bucket as Town 15 being town owned property and that it could be sold. But I don't think we want to go back and re-rank this year due to that constraint. I just think we should consider that next year. But that's my opinion, and other people obviously can have a different opinion on that.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to understand the background. So thinking about it next year is totally fine.
I think it's a good point though that Rainer's raising, and as far as I'm concerned, like we just passed approved the conservation easement on the CenturyLink parcel this past Monday. So CenturyLink, not only has it been zoned open space, but now there's a conservation easement on place, and that parcel is open space forever. And there's nothing that a future board could do to undo that because that conservation easement is placed on that parcel. So, future boards can always revisit any parcel that we own that is undeveloped and choose to develop it or sell it. So I think it's a fair point. It may not necessarily be as high a priority because we already own it, Town 15, Ridge 2, but if you end up having 10 years down the road, a very pro-development board that decides that they want to improve these things, there's really nothing that can stop that from happening unless there's a conservation easement placed on it. So nothing's final until it's final.
Thanks for that. I agree, Rainer. I think that's a really good point, and I think we should bring that back to, number one, be consistent, and number two, for the same reasons I said, why we rank the property, to just keep it in our, in our scope or our field of vision that's a town owned but open space property. So thanks for that. Okay. What would y'all like to do next with this data? I mean, the final thing we need to discuss is what we do next once we're comfortable with all the numbers, and I pretty much have a pretty good idea what we need to do. But before we get there, I wanted to see if we wanted to dig in deeper or if people are comfortable with the data as it is. I mean, for me, I've ranked so many times now and the result is about the same. It feels right. So I'm pretty comfortable with how this came out. But that's also coming from someone who's been doing it a while and not, definitely open to other perspectives on what people want to do.
I'm also fine not discussing it any further. I'm fine with it as is.
I am too.
Okay. Again, thank you all. You know, next year, well, we'll get into the work plan discussion in a bit, but I would say this will be on our work plan for next year, but we'll we'll get into that as we get to the work plan. So,
I have
what we,
one quick
oh yeah,
question.
sure, Allison.
I'm just hoping that with this ranking, anything that's adjacent to Boulder County open space, can we just leave it in the same order to put into our request? That
Oh,
usually comes down
has
in the
that
spring.
request come down yet?
No, well, I have the packet, but it's probably in February, and we could revisit it, or this part could be done.
Um, just looking at this, did we? I would have to go look at that because, yeah, because I think that's what we did last time is we had everything that was touching Boulder County in our prioritized list to them. Did we get the response from last year? I don't recall. Because I think we put this Third Avenue tract on there and I don't remember what their response was.
We did get a response, and I think I sent it out to the group.
Yeah, I just don't, I'd
Gosh.
have to go look, but nothing's changed. But if the group's comfortable with that, and just for our new members, so what happens here is that Boulder County reaches out to each of the municipalities each year for trail ranking or trail like connectivity into open space and as well as open space purchase, rank ordered. And then they come back and comment on if they'd be willing to partner on those tasks in future years, assuming there's budget. Or a lot of times they'll say, well, if Superior can get a buyer, then we'd be willing to contribute, right? That was what they had always said about CenturyLink, and that is what happened with that. So it's some feedback that we provide every year into Boulder County is what we're discussing. I mean, I'm fine with that. It's one less thing we have to discuss at a meeting and nothing's changed. So I think that's good. But if other people don't feel that way, please speak up. Okay. So next is, I mean, what we've done with this data in the past is we then combine it up into our open space summary report and recommendations document. I don't see why we would do anything different this year. We're on a pretty good roll of about an annual update of that document. I think it'll be a pretty minor update this year. I mean, we've got a new set of rankings, but they're pretty consistent with what we've had in the past. We'll list a few new properties. We also keep a history of properties that used to be on the list and now are either being developed or acquired by the town, which actually is a really useful history as we look back on the properties. So, you know, the next step is to just rewrite that document with a few minor edits, and then when we're ready and comfortable with it, making a recommendation to the board to accept the document. I'm happy to do the work. I've done it in the past, and so I'm comfortable with it. But if someone else would like to take that on, by all means. I don't want to, you know, I've done it. I know how to do it, but if someone else is interested in writing and getting into that document, this is a great way to do it also. So I'll leave this like the other one. If someone's interested, send me an email. If not, I will plan to work on it and bring it back to the group when ready. Okay. Thank you. We are, or I guess I should say, any other discussion that we want to have on the open space ranking review?
Thanks for your work on that, Ryan, and for the OSSRR as well.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, I mean, it's getting pretty easy, but you know, everyone providing their rankings and you know on time was really worked out well. So thank you all for getting those in, and yeah, we ended up I think with a good result. Okay, creative financing. So I probably should have phrased this term a little bit. Tracy wanted to have more discussion on this, and I'm not sure if it was really creative financing, but it's really just talking about the financing situation of our fund. But then it might branch out to, are there other things we could do in terms of financing that might help if property does come available. So Tracy, do you want to start us off, please?
Yeah, and I don't mean to steer in a different direction, but I'm gonna start with one topic first. So
Sure. Yeah.
we talked about the financing and things like crowdsourcing and endowments and things of that nature to that we could try to have this campaign to find additional funding in order to continue to effectively acquire open space parcels within the town before they're all developed. And in thinking about that over the past month, my big thought was based on our ranking, we know that Zaharias is now at the top, and we have a little bit of a window right now between, and I shouldn't say between because that's making an assumption, but we have a space after the recent application on that parcel wherein we can actually discuss that parcel legally without getting into issues. Because there is no current application. And of course, Allison or Trustee Lisa, speak up if something new has popped up that we're not aware of in the past couple of weeks. But so in light of that, my thought was, would it be worthwhile and could we get the board to approve having someone like a nonprofit, like Conservation Fund, approach the owner of that parcel and see if there is even any interest in dealing with OSAC and entertaining the idea of selling to OSAC. Because if we did this entire fundraising campaign and got people to on board and interested, is that going to be completely fruitless and a waste of time if that owner is not interested whatsoever? Now, of course, we could put that money towards other parcels and other activities, but our next parcel down the list is Bulljack, and based on the continuity document that I did this last week and getting information from town staff, those families there are not interested in selling anytime soon, and that price tag would be quite substantial. Not that Zaharias isn't, but so that's my thought on it. Should we take the time that we have and after this application and jump on it and have someone approach the owner of the Zaharias parcel? And I'd love everyone else's thoughts and feedback on that idea.
Tracy, I've been thinking about this also, and
Yeah.
I had another thought that, and I think that before we go there, I think we should talk a little bit about the fund balance, because we do know more now that we know Boulder is in, and I think it's confirmed that Jefferson County is contributing. Trustee Lasis, do you recall if that was done or if
Yeah, we got 3.75 million between Boulder and Jeffco.
Okay, awesome. So what that means for the funding is the income for that property is about, or for the sales tax is about 1.1 million a year. Once you pay back basically the bonds, so the fund was wiped out. The rest of it, except for I think about 200 to 300K of CenturyLink, is coming from the bonds that the town issued. So the rest of that comes out of a loan that the open space fund will need to pay back. But there's an extra about 250K that this fund will grow. And this is very general, right? We'll have to dig, when the budgets come out for next year, we'll dig in and we'll know the numbers much better. But the fund will be growing about, I think, 250 to 300K a year after the CenturyLink. So it isn't completely wiped out. Now, the time for it to build up to anything substantial, I mean, we thought that the price tag on Zaharias was, $6 or $7 million. So we're pretty far away from that. But my point being here, though, is that with Saharia, something we might consider is not a full purchase, but a partial purchase. And would he be willing to sell some acreage so that we could expand the open space and put an easement on the property next to the reservoir? And that might be a way to protect that resource without needing to come up with the full amount of money. So that was my other thought on how we might get creative over there.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And I would love to know what everyone else thinks as well.
Well, I would agree that contacting the property owner to get his opinion or her opinion in principle is important before anyone is digging further into how to find money for this or for that. I mean, if they say, I don't want to do anything like that because the use for commercial or residential brings me much more money, then you would be basically working on a dead end. So I think getting an opinion would be very valuable.
And so history. So town staff has traditionally been the individuals who have been reaching out to property owners. And we do have a document where that's all listed as to when they last did that and who made that contact. In the past, the owner, if I can just say Mr. Zaharis, I'm not sure if there's other individuals who are owners, but that's who the individual has been. And he has not been interested in selling to the town and was interested in going the commercial route. However, there was just an application that did not go forward. So would his mindset be changed at this point in time? That's what we would be hoping for anyway.
And just to give everybody a heads up, so I don't think that a new application has been submitted, but I have kind of just heard, through the grapevine is that they are planning on bringing something back that will have a mixture of commercial and residential at the property. So there would be like some sort of little strip mall type thing, maybe a gas station, something with like a little office, maybe a convenience store, and then some residential. I think that's what they're thinking right now, but I don't think they've actually formally submitted it. And as far as I'm concerned, while the board, when something is submitted to the town and then we need to be impartial and sit as judges in a quasi-judicial capacity, I don't think that OSAC is constrained at all. You guys are an advisory committee. You've got your mission to achieve open space acquisitions. And if you want to mix things up and try to make things happen, I think you guys should go forward and give it a shot.
Well, I appreciate that support, Mark, but we got in hot water several years ago for trying to do that on this exact parcel. And
yeah, and I yelled at the town attorneys for doing that because I think that they were wrong, and ultimately they work for us. So,
well, thank you.
Wait a minute, the attorneys work for the town and not the. Sorry. Did you say gas station amongst the various things you thought might be in the new proposal for that property?
Yes.
Did I hear that? Next to a reservoir. Interesting.
And it's zoned right now RAC, which is Regional Activity Center. So they could build, if they wanted to, a gas station on there by right. So they don't need the board's approval. They could build a hotel there. They could build a convenience store. They could build a lot of things by right without needing the board's approval.
Point taken. What came to mind there was the reservoir and the impact of the chemicals associated with petroleum and that. And
oh yeah.
Some sort of ESA type impediment. Not ESA, but anyway, some sort of impediment on the environmental side. Given the town's reinvestment in that water reservoir.
That is the delicate dance that we do anytime we're considering one of these applications, because sometimes you say no, like with Rogers Farm, for example, right? They came to the board with a concept plan to do a pretty nice residential development, and part of that parcel was already platted back in like 1906. And so they came to the board, they said, hey, what do you think about this concept plan, the board, crapped all over that concept plan. And then they said, well, okay, we'll just go with the zoning that's on the land right now. And it's already platted, and they just started building it. They didn't need our approval. And then all of a sudden people are like, wow, that's really dense. And that's, those are really not necessarily consistent with the rest of original town. Like, that's the dance that we're always delicately doing is, okay, there's a certain line where you can push too far, and then all of a sudden you force a developer's hand where they're going to say, well, I'm going to make some use of this to recoup my investment in the property. And ultimately they don't want to use the RIC zoning. They want to do some residential because it was zoned that way, because originally there was supposed to be an interchange there onto 36 that never happened. So when there was supposed to be an interchange there, a gas station or a hotel or a Quickie Mart or something like that would have made sense. But now that there isn't, it doesn't really make sense. But at the same time, like, they're trying to figure out what they can do with it.
Thank you for that background.
So to answer Tracy's original question, I think we have the opportunity to work with, whether it's conservation fund or whatever. I think this is our time to do that. I would support it. I think it's a conversation. There's no guarantee in anything. And I think in a couple months, if there is a plan and we didn't take this step, we would be very frustrated with ourselves for not taking that opportunity. And I just think there's no guarantees that's going to come out of anything. And I just think it should happen. It should happen while we have the opportunity.
Yeah, I didn't mention that part in my comment, Tracy. I fully support this. You never get an answer to 100% of the questions you don't ask.
And I'd love to hear from others, but I do want to just interject, because I didn't give a great background on Kara and Tracy in case they don't know about the Conservation Fund. But just email me if you have further questions. But the summary is, there's a zillion nonprofits around the country who work to do things like this, like acquire land or preserve waterways, et cetera, et cetera. Back in fall of 2017, I went to COSA and found several of those organizations, the biggest being, or the best connection I made at that point was Trust for Public Land. And Justin Spring worked there. Justin eventually moved to the Conservation Fund. Those are the two biggest here in Colorado. And fortunately, the town board was very supportive of the town of Superior working with Justin. And I feel very strongly that he's one of the main reasons why we were able to acquire CenturyLink. So he approached CenturyLink with the blessing by the board and information from the town staff, and then developed that relationship, because it's very helpful when it's an outside entity doing that instead of town staff who maybe has, history, right? That may be good or maybe not good. It was a win. It was a win on that parcel anyway. Who's to say what would happen with this one?
Well, and I'd like to add that CenturyLink also, I mean, we tried, that property for years and years, and then we finally got the timing right. So we don't try on Zaharias. We don't know if the timing is right now or the temperature has changed or anything like that. I think it's a great opportunity to at least ask it. I mean, when the development proposals have come up against that, there's been a lot of public comment, outreach, discussion on that property. And, my general rule is if I hear from one person, there's probably 10 people that have thoughts or comments about it that probably didn't want to speak out on a public forum, or maybe they're not on that forum. And so just from the number of people that I did see comment about that, I think there's a great community interest in it. And I think that's why we're on this committee, is to try and represent the interest of the community as best we can.
And Tracy and Joel are absolutely right. I mean, the acquisition of CenturyLink would not have happened were it not for Tracy making that introduction of Justin to the board, and OSAC making the recommendation that you guys made for us to basically spend everything that we've got to try to make the CenturyLink acquisition happen. So it was those two pushes that made it happen. So, I mean, if you want to do something on Zaharias kind of similarly, I think the only way it's going to happen is if OSAC leads it.
So one other thing I'll add is that, the financing will be tricky, but that's what these organizations do, is help figure out the financing when it is tricky, right? And they will have way more expertise about what to do than we could ever come up with on our own. So I think if we have any shot, this is the best way to approach it. So I'm fully in favor of it, Tracy. If hopefully Justin's willing to do it on this property with us, but I'd say go for it.
So then the next step is, do we want to use Justin? Because I don't want to make assumptions. I mean, I think we have he's amazing and brilliant, and we have great history with him. So I would move to do that. And does anyone remember what we did 3 years ago or 2.5 years ago? I know we kept communicating with the board, and Mark would probably be the best person to remember this, but did the board actually give us approval formally in a meeting, or was it more of a casual approval?
Tracy, do you mean in reference to CenturyLink?
No, I mean in reference to moving forward with Justin, that just in reference to him actually being able to reach out to CenturyLink.
Okay, thank you.
Do we need a formal approval, I guess, is my clear question.
I would think you would, and I seem to recall with CenturyLink, the way it happened was you reached out to, or you met Justin through COSA, and then we talked about it at an OSAC meeting, and then you guys made the recommendation to, you know, do whatever it took to spend everything that we had in our open space fund, to borrow as much as we could in terms of the bonding capacity that we had, to explore third party, funding, alternate, funding sources. So there was a very kind of detailed recommendation that you guys made. And then I think the board discussed it either at a board meeting or at a retreat. And then Justin came and presented to the town board. And then I don't really remember how it went, other than at some point Clint and I met with CenturyLink and Justin was there, and then all of a sudden we had a deal.
All of a sudden.
All of a sudden.
Yeah, all of a sudden.
Only a decade and millions of dollars later, right? I'm not sure. I think that we had just a recommendation to work with for Justin to work with the CenturyLink and approach them first before we threw it all on the table. So I'm disagreeing with you, Mark, but anyone else can speak up.
Can you say that again, Tracy? I'm just trying to remember, because I'm also wondering if I have it in notes somewhere.
Didn't he come to present to us too?
He did. He presented to us, and then we brought it up at a dinner with the board, which was like a spring dinner, but it didn't really go. And then we kept working with Mark, who kept communicating with the board. I mean, it just drug on forever before he actually was able to go talk to CenturyLink. So that's why I'm confused as to the final step that we got the approval for him to go meet with them.
And not to muddy the waters, but I thought we also asked for permission for him to talk to the Zaharias people at the same time. And I thought we got that approval.
Yeah, we did actually. But then I think he really took the action to refrain because there was for lack of a better term, a bigger fish to catch.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we already have the approval from that then. I mean, if we wanted to be safe, we could make a recommendation this evening, and if we feel like it's safe, then we could move on. But I think that from what Trustee Lasis was saying about a potential plan coming forward, that time is critical here. I'd hate to wait another meeting before we made a recommendation. So
yeah, that's a great point.
I mean, I think you make a recommendation to the board to allow you to reach out to Justin to see if this is a possibility. And at least you've got it documented there that it was discussed at the October 14th OSAC meeting, and at least the ball will start rolling.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Great.
We have a board retreat on Monday, and I could bring it up as an agenda item as well before we have an application.
Thank you, Mark. That's awesome.
I'm trying to craft this recommendation as we go here. The conservation. I hate doing these while we're waiting, but it's the only way. Fund for potential interest in the, okay, I've got something. It's really rough, so help me clean this up, please. OSAC recommends the board approve OSAC to reach out to the Conservation Fund for potential interest in the Zaharias property. Some words there probably need to change, so fire away.
Yeah, we need something in there about Justin having, or the Conservation Fund getting permission to contact the owners.
Yeah,
I think.
that's very important because otherwise we need to make another recommendation for.
Okay, recommend the board approve the Conservation Fund to reach to contact the Zaharias property owners about potential interest in a sale or partial sale.
My proposed agenda topic for the retreat would just be OSAC would like to reach out to Justin Spring and the Conservation Fund before any new application on the Zaharias property is submitted.
I think that's perfect.
Leave it at that. And
oh, okay. So you don't think we need to make a recommendation? You think you could just get it on the agenda?
Well, I'm just going to submit it, but I think you guys should make a recommendation too. So
okay.
It doesn't sound like I'm talking out of line.
Understood. Okay, as written, OSAC recommends the board approve the Conservation Fund to contact the Zaharias property owners about potential interest in a sale or partial sale. That's not that strong. Potential, maybe about interest in a sale or partial sale. I mean, it's short and sweet. Anybody want to make changes?
Sorry, Ryan, can I be annoying? Can you read it one more time?
Yeah, absolutely. OSAC recommends the board approve the Conservation Fund to contact the Zaharias property owners about interest in a sale or partial sale. Partial sale seems weird, right? Partial.
Can we just change it to regarding potential?
Regarding their future plans with the property. I mean, like,
sure.
Like, we don't want to box ourselves in here. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter, but you know.
And regarding future plans of the property and any potential interest in open space sale.
How about regarding a purchase of some or all of the property?
Yeah, I'm open to any of them.
Mark, do you foresee any sort of the board tripping on this in any way, regardless of like the subtleties of the words we use here?
No, I mean.
Okay.
Yeah, we kill ourselves.
We'll get the idea.
Yeah. Whatever you want is fine.
Now, whether the board is interested in it or not, or if our hands are tied because something's already been filed, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we don't know. So we need to make the recommendation. And if the board needs to not act on it or not acknowledge it, then that's fine. So, okay. So as read, OSAC recommends the board approve the Conservation Fund to contact the Zaharias owners regarding a potential sale of some or all of the property.
That's fine. Can you just put Zaharias parcel? I'm being nitpicky, but.
The Zaharias parcel owners?
Yes.
That sounds okay.
Well, we just call it Zaharias because of who owns it. You know, it is technically the parcel located on blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah.
Well, it's Mr. Zaharias that owns the property.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're splitting hairs there, so that's fine.
I think so too.
Okay. So does everyone, let me read it one more time. Oh, go ahead, Tracy. More discussion. That's fine.
No, I was just going to move to make a recommendation to adopt this as written.
Get a second?
I second.
Thank you, Joel. All in favor, just raise your hand. Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you. Tracy, I appreciate it. Thank you for bringing this up and getting it back on our radar. It'd be pretty easy to sit back and just enjoy the ride on CenturyLink, but I appreciate you keeping that property in the forefront. So right on.
Ryan, can you just make sure you email me the
Yep,
recommendation?
I've got it written right here, and I will email it to you before the meeting is over. So
Awesome.
thank you, Kate.
And I
Okay.
just want to follow up so it's very, very clear that we all know, OSAC knows that the funding is low, but OSAC is open to other ideas on fundraising as well as other ideas that the Conservation Fund may have should these Zaharias owners actually even be interested in selling.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what'll happen, right? Like Frank, I agree with what Frank said. If we don't ask, we don't know what could happen. Okay, the last full agenda item is to start thinking about the work plan for 2021. I know that it's fairly early. Well, maybe it's not early, right? We want to have it done by the end of the year, but I did think that we should at least start taking a look at this and figuring out what we want to do here. I will add just a couple caveats maybe to this. You know, the board did recommend that we look at OSAC ProStack merger. Like I said, I was working with Todd a little bit on this. The board and the town haven't taken any action that's been public yet. I have asked, Trustee Shaw was spearheading this. He was the ProStack liaison. I've asked him if he could try to help move this forward for the reason of our work plan development. He said he would see what he could do, but we should move forward. Assuming, you know, we don't know if anything will happen, so we should move forward. However, one decision provides some insight into the direction in that, you know, the town was going to not approve new members if it was looking like we were going to merge, but now OSAC and ProStack are full. So that, I'm not saying it's a decision, but it's a clue that the direction we will go is most likely, or could be, that we're not going to merge and that we will keep separate work plans. So I think, because, you know, that's how we would approach this anyway. And so I think that's the right way that we should go with looking at our work plan. However, you know, there's a chance that we'll have more clarity on this by our next meeting. So I think we should start brainstorming, but I think that this will be the majority of the work that we do in November. We'll be working on trying to shore up the work plan. I think that we could go through probably the items here sort of fairly quickly and maybe just mark things that, you know, could be up for discussion, or you know, we know that we want to continue to do. Like some of this we just don't, you know, we know that we're going to do National Trails Day. Well, maybe we don't, but, you know, probably pretty likely that we would keep that on our agenda, right? And the other outreach and work on the budget and things like that. So we could do that, or we could just flat out start brainstorming new ideas or new things that we know that needed to get added to the work plan for next year. You know, the second one is way more fun than going through a list of items. So up to the group on how you'd like to approach this.
And just one comment. I appreciate you raising it early, because I think for newbies, and I still consider myself new, it takes a while to wrap your head around what all these things actually are. I really like, though, in reviewing the ProStack one, it's tight. It's on one page. I can wrap my head around it. Our list is somewhere around 40 or 35 things long. Theirs is more like 20. So I think if we can be more specific. And I think the other thing here, when we think about work plans, there's a tendency to sort of think through the things we have to do and kind of check a box. I think we need to think about the impact of what we do and why we're doing it sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. The other thing here is, like there's all the events in town, right? I don't know if each one of those needs to actually be a line item, because there's really no pre-work that we have to do specifically for those events. The only reason we put it on there is to make sure we remember to get people scheduled to see who can show up and who can't.
Yeah,
so
I actually flagged that on mine too, and highlighted all those cells. I would pull those out of the list and have a list of events and make sure, because they get lost in a big list.
Yeah, we just have to be careful that, Arbor Day is in May, and then if we don't talk about it in April, May will show up and we haven't coordinated who's going to be there.
Point
But
taken.
I'm okay with that. And like I said, we don't have to have this done today, right? I think just trying to, I think that having some discussion today and people going off and really looking at this and coming back next week to really dig in and decide what to do is the right approach.
Ryan,
go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry,
go ahead.
I interrupted. No, please.
I mean, I appreciate Frank's sentiment. I would like to know from you and Kate, since you are the only two who have been officers, if this has worked effectively in the past. In my impression, it has been, but I'd love to know, and Allison as well, I'd love to know your experiences with it.
Well, I couldn't put agendas together without this. There's just no way, right? I would miss things. We would have such a mess of getting agendas put together each meeting if we didn't have this list. So if we didn't put together this list, I would put together a separate one like this for my own purposes of just getting things scheduled within the months that they need to be scheduled for all the things that we do. So, a very specific purpose, but it works for me. And you can kind of see what I sent out is, you can kind of see how I track it. I put when it was completed, I try to put notes over on the side on ideas that maybe we could have for future years' work plans based on how it went in that meeting with that work plan item. So it also helps to evolve getting ready for next year for me. But this is also something that I just keep on my computer to help manage and, send out this time of year to help everybody work through it. So I don't know if that answers the question or not, but I mean, one thing we could consider though is we do have a pretty long list of these priority ongoing items that the question becomes, do we need to have them on this list for us to be approved to work on them? Because the other big thing that happens is that the board will task us with things within the year that aren't on our work plan. And that's just we're here to serve the board. If they need our opinion, we will go and do that work. So, some of this feels, I kind of agree with Frank on the bottom that some of it feels like it's just part of our mission statement and not specifically needing to be in the work plan. But I don't know if I feel that strongly about trying to change it up.
Well, I see a reason for leaving it on there because as far as I know, this is a public document. I mean, the approved work plan. Yep. So it gives Superior citizens an idea what those advisory committees are actually working on and or what they're supposed to work on. And I think it's at a level not too detailed, but good enough that everyone in Superior can figure out what this committee is about.
Okay.
And all committees do submit their work plans to the board. I've never had it discussed where we would get rid of a work plan, but, you know, the board expects typically to have a work plan from every committee. And then sometimes they may make suggestions to edit it once this is turned in, and then it's edited and then approved. So the board has input on the work plans.
So this could be opening a can of worms, and you can squash it if you want to. I'm fine with that. But why do we make our work plan before we know what the board's goals are for the year?
I'm at a loss for words, Kate. I have no answer for
Well,
you.
I can counter a little bit with, is our work plan dependent on what the board desires, or is our work plan dependent on our mission, which is independent of the board's desires sometimes?
And my answer to that is it's probably both.
Yeah. I was going to add a third dimension there. Is it possible that our priorities and the recommendations that come from them influence the board?
I mean,
You know,
my thought is
you're either on the menu. What is the saying there? You're either at the table or on the menu. And this is our way to get at the table with our work plan.
I think, Kate, though, it's probably one of these things that if we had to wait for that and then spend 2 meetings to get it done, that we might not have a work plan done until May of that year. And that's too late to drive the work for that year. So the process of us making a recommendation or making a plan based on what we've done in the past, and then letting the board fill in as they review it and approve it, seems like a reasonable way to go.
When does the board set its annual priorities? What's the board's year?
So we're going to be meeting on Monday, and one of the topics during our retreat is going to be talking about goals for 2021. But that has also been subject to change after the election, because in theory we've got potentially 3 new trustees. So the board will adopt its goals in January. But, you know, I've been doing this now for 4 years, and my experience is whenever we're reviewing a work plan, what we will do, and it's always to different degrees depending on who's on the board and which specific trustee decides that they want to get in the weeds on this stuff. I find it's very rare that we will tell any of the advisory committees to do something that is, you know, 180 degrees opposite of like what's being proposed to us. Very rarely is there something that like is coming from the board that you guys aren't already thinking about, that isn't already being proposed. So usually there will be some editing, maybe a little nitpicking here and there, but the grand scheme of things is going to stay consistent based on how you want to direct it. You know, so it's very, I think it's very rare for the board to all of a sudden spring something on the advisory committees that is like from, you know, totally out of left field that you weren't anticipating. So what I think is more helpful is for you guys to come up with a work plan for the things that you want to do and for the things that you think are important for our town and for the board to be focused on. And then if the board has, you know, takes issue with any of those, then you make a case for it and you say, well, this is why you're wrong. Or, you know, you listen to the feedback from the board and, you know, maybe it's an improvement, but I think you should create the work plan for the work that you want to do, because after all, this is the work that you're going to be doing. So you might as well enjoy it and do the work that you want to do. But that's just me. I'm not speaking for the full board, but generally speaking, I think it's pretty rare. And I think also like maybe in the previous board, you know, before 2018, there was more of a tendency, I think, to micromanage some of the things that the advisory committees were doing. The board, at least the current board as of 2018, I think was a little more willing to give, you know, flexibility to the advisory committees to really shape their own destiny.
Thanks for that. So for some reason, the document just stopped sharing. Let me share that again. I mean, so maybe what we could do is we could brainstorm a little bit tonight. I mean, I've just had some things that like, for example, I feel pretty strongly that we're going to have work to do on what's next for CenturyLink now that it's got a conservation easement on it, right? Is there a trailhead? I've heard some, whenever I talk to it in certain circles, there's talk of wanting to make it, a better, what do we do with trails on there? What do we do for mountain bikers that see it as a really amazing piece of land for, some biking opportunities? I just think there's work for us to do on what to do over there. Now, part of that is related to the grants that we're submitting this year to get some money to help define that, but I think we're going to be involved and probably shows up on this list somewhere. Another interesting project, and I don't even know if this is OSAC's purview, but we talk about trails, and it came up actually in one of the candidate forums about transportation and how many bikers there are. So what I was starting to think about was, for trails, should we also be putting underpasses as part of our trail asks and rankings? I mean, I know those things are incredibly expensive, but just thinking about driving past Indiana and not Colton, but Rock Creek Parkway when kids are crossing over there to go to school, right? What a great place to potentially have an underpass to help alleviate, potential issues there. I don't know if maybe that's not an OSAC thing, and maybe we need to just send that idea to ProStac or the transportation committee. But it's things like that we could be thinking about, that we can have influence on our work plan. So, thoughts on how we should proceed? We do have a couple meetings to get this done, so we don't have to rush tonight.
Ryan, the thought that continues to pop up in my mind is, what our work plan looks like next year, given the PROS master plans, in the works right now, and how that impacts our work plan and what we do, either in support of that, or in addition to it, or as a result of.
Allison, can you remind us when that'll be done?
Sure. I have a quick comment on it. I think it'll be done, was it February, I think, is the newest date for it. But irregardless of that, when we get that plan, OSAC or the group can always take that plan and then move to amend their work plan. And so we can change our work plan at any time, with that updated information. And then pending the board approval process.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Joel. I mean, we do have an ongoing item to provide feedback into the PROS master plan. We can tweak that a little bit to reevaluate our work plan after the master plan is released or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. And I guess my thinking was, kind of like we discussed before, some of these ongoing items, because they're not prioritized into a quarter, sometimes I forget about them personally. Like, and I think that the PROS master plan will have a significant impact on our direction. That's my expectation, at least.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me recommend this. How about before the next pre-read, that if anyone wants to provide suggested changes before the pre-read, to send them in to me. I will then go through and mark up what I think we could do. And I think that we might, you know, and I will really think of, and I think people really should think about some of these things that are, you know, if it's in our mission statement, doesn't need to be on our work plan, like continue to work with the town board and staff to acquire high priority open space. I just am torn on that because, I mean, it's the most important thing we do. And so it seems like it should be there, but it's also makes the priority ongoing list long and
I can play
somewhat
devil.
off the bottom.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ryan, but I can play devil's advocate on that. In the first couple of years that I was on this committee, we didn't really participate in that. That was really all town staff reaching out to property owners and OSAC not really having much involvement in that, despite that that's one of our main priorities.
Okay, that's a good perspective. So that was something that yeah, that's a good perspective. So thank you. I mean, on one hand, it's been working, right? I don't know if we need to come in and go and tear this thing up, partially because it's working and partially because it's a lot of work. And is it work that's worth our time when we have, you know, limited amount of effort that we put into this? So, I mean, I think there would be some tweaks to it, but I also want to be open to other people looking critically at this and thinking that there may be different ways to organize this or different ways to put in our work for the year. So I'm happy to take that first pass, and then take input and ideas that people have, and then work to getting close to refining it by the next meeting or at the next meeting.
That sounds great to me. Thanks, Ryan.
Okay.
I appreciate that, Ryan. I hear you saying you're going to do a lot of things though, just at this one
Well, that's true.
meeting. So
Yeah,
I want everyone
no.
to be aware of that, of all the things that you're taking on.
So
I can take
who
this
wants
one.
to,
This is fine.
or you want to take this one, Kate?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
totally fine. I think if people want to just send me, and since I already send the pre-workout anyway, I can make sure I add that if you have suggestions, send them my way.
And Kate, I've done it enough that if questions come up, you
Okay.
know, I'll be happy to walk you through what I've done in the past.
Okay.
And Tracy, thank you for that. I do tend to just sign myself up, and I shouldn't. You know, everyone should have an opportunity to do this work, and that is never my intent. So if you really want to do something, please speak up, or even, like I said, let me know after the meeting, and we'll, you know, we can work it out. Okay.
Question, Ryan. I'm sorry. I want to make sure I give useful feedback. The column A is priority. Are those in priority order, or is it just a list for each quarter?
No, it actually is a priority to get done in that quarter.
Thank you.
And so we try to work on, you know, 1 through 3, the first meeting. You know, certain things come up that'll cause things to shift around. But just when we think about it, like we know that National Trails Day, everything needs to be in by the end of Q1. So if we do it in the last meeting, right, we're really compressing ourselves to getting the event scheduled. So this was actually new for us last year, was putting this priority. Last time we just had them numbered, but it is why we put the priority in that column, was for that purpose. But that's a good catch on here, and I think that served us well.
Okay, thank you.
And, you know, especially on the priority ongoing things in the bottom that, I don't know though. I don't know if these have priority since they're not in a quarter. So I guess we could discuss that, but I don't know. This worked.
It strikes me back to Tracy's original question, which I think was really good. The document's useful for you. It gives you a way to track things. It gives you a way to build agendas. It gives you a list you can check things off from. So I'm on board. I don't know that quibbling about, you know, something being 6 versus 8 in a list really matters that much. I think if it's on this list, chances are we want to try and get it done. So
yeah, I think where it did though is where there was a schedule dependency, it just helped to have it be a higher priority. So it got done. You know, it just showed up earlier in the list. So I'm working down the agenda. It just shows up earlier in the meetings unless there's a reason it doesn't.
Yeah.
So then, having said all of this, you know, with everything that's going on, or, you know, again, the ProStack OSAC merger or discussions that we had, if the board acts on that, the board and or the town act on that before we get back to this next week, this could get completely flipped on its head. So we'll just need to be flexible and be ready to react if and when something happens. Okay. Good. I think we're done, unless anyone has any other questions. Okay, awesome. So I will go back to the agenda, and we are now on to updates and look aheads. So in the last meeting, we worked quite a bit about getting our naming suggestions off to the board. Allison, do you know when that'll go in front of the board and if they would like a presentation on that from the group? And if you don't know yet, that's fine too. I was just curious if we knew when that might happen.
Trustee Lasis, would you like to weigh in on either OSAC bringing it to the board or how we could potentially figure that out?
I think it would be great to have you guys give the presentation, so long as it's Bodie McBoatface. Open space. But seriously, I think it would be great. I mean, you guys made your recommendation with the names. I don't know when anything is scheduled to come before the board. It doesn't look like it's scheduled for the October 26th meeting. That's the only thing that I've got a preliminary agenda on. Yeah. So I imagine it'll be after the election.
And I do know it was in our notes, but the recommendation was in our notes.
Yeah, I'll reach out to the town manager and just see when he's planning on putting that on the agenda, and I'll do you guys want to come and present and kind of make the case for the recommendations?
You know, we did for Ormond Roche.
Yeah, I think we would, because I think there was a lot of discussion on the process, and that the recommendation wasn't able to capture some of the nuance. We did write up that nuance and added it with, but it's a bunch of words, in a fairly long write-up. I think it would be better in a few slides to succinctly explain what we did and what the results were. So,
right, so I'll ask the town manager to just give us an update as to when he anticipates putting that on an agenda, and to make sure that OSAC is invited to participate in that meeting and give a presentation on the recommendations that you're making to us.
Okay, thank you.
I was just thinking, so the new board will go into effect when exactly after the election?
It's after the Secretary of State certifies the election, so we'll have a board meeting unless it gets canceled. I doubt it'll get canceled. So back in 2018, we ended up having a board meeting, although I think it was originally scheduled not to happen. Then we had the big oil and gas scare, so we ended up having a special meeting with the existing board and the newly elected board members who were not yet sworn in. And so they get sworn in once the election gets certified. And usually the election gets certified something like 3 weeks after election day, because they have to count all the overseas soldier, ballots, and do whatever they need to do to make sure that they've got it down to every single vote being counted. So usually I think I ended up getting sworn in right around Thanksgiving.
Okay.
Or maybe like the first week of December.
I mean, it's a small thing in the grand scheme of the board, but it would be nice if the current board could do this, given that they worked on the, helping us with the acquisition, but that's just my personal thought on it.
No, I think that's a really good point. I don't see any reason why we can't do it now. So I'll put that in my request to the town manager.
And if that is the case, then we would, if it's for the October 26th meeting, we would have to have everything ready for the packet by Monday.
So do the presentation content need to be in the packet? Is that how that works?
Yes, we'd have a cover memo and then the slides.
So that'll be tight. Anyone have any cycles to work on putting together 3 slides?
I can work on that.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Tracy, did we circulate that additional information that we sent to the board about how we went through the process? I think I did. That Frank and I worked on after our last meeting, that we said this was what was the supplemental information to go along with the recommendation.
Yeah, I don't remember it, but I could have missed it. So can you just resend it to me again, please?
Yeah, because I think that's a really good start, and it's getting that content into visual. And then the Survey Monkey had a nice graphic, that we maybe could use in there. And then we'll make sure to highlight Bodie McBoatface, or I forget what it was on the presentation for Mark.
Sounds good.
So,
I'm just going to keep it simple, but I'll send it to you.
Thank you, Tracy. I'll get that to you either tonight or tomorrow morning. Okay, next one. So the trail ranking update. So this is more of a continuation of last week, that ProStack still has not finalized the work that we did last time. I guess at their last meeting, they didn't have quorum, and so they wanted to go back and look at it. I've been told by their chair that they plan to sign off on it at their meeting next week. And if they do, if they sign off on it with the way that we submitted it, all we will need to do is make a recommendation to the board to accept the trail ranking as also submitted by ProStack. So it'll be a simple recommendation. And it's nice to know those are coming, because we can write the recommendation ahead of time, and I don't have to write it, or we don't have to write it while everyone's in the meeting. So that is where we are with the trail ranking. The CenturyLink funding, Trustee Lasis filled us in there that Boulder and Jefferson County are in for 3.75. And the latest I heard was Broomfield is not this year, but could be in the future. And was a while ago, and that's pretty vague. So if anybody knows anything different, let me know. But it's still 3.75 of the 4 million that was that we were asking from these other municipalities. So it's still the vast majority of the money.
Yeah, what we were told was that Broomfield, because of COVID, was not able to participate, and so their contribution was only going to be 250,000. We haven't gotten a clear no that it's never going to happen, but it's not going to happen this year, and I wouldn't hold your breath on it.
Yeah, fair enough. So and then also, as Trustee Lasis said, that there is now the conservation easement in place. Is that correct, or does that have to? Or no, that got approved at the last meeting, correct, by the board?
Yep.
So that's done. So
it just needs to get recorded.
Okay. Yeah, that's huge. So
absolutely
awesome. Okay, we've had the standing update on ConocoPhillips. This was one of our updates to just keep an eye on this. So the latest that I've heard was that actually Medtronic has pulled out of that development plan, and now that they're eyeing a new space in Lafayette, which is on the south of the Kaiser Hospital site down there in Lafayette. So I don't know what that will do for the Red Tail Ridge development, but my guess is it throws it on its head quite a bit, and that we may not hear much for a while in that development. However, this is all I'm picking up from social media and the Boulder camera or daily camera. So if anybody knows anything else, please let me know. Okay, well, interesting for sure to watch that whole thing develop. Okay, moving on to standing updates. So the Ormond Roach Trailhead.
No, hold on one second. We had the budget update from town staff.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Kate, for keeping me honest. So the budget, it looks like Mark did see that it was not included in the packet, and then he's requested that it has been, or request that it will get added.
Yeah, I CC'd OSAC on an email that I sent to the town board and town manager. We have an agenda item on the 26th for budget amendments. So I imagine that there's some things that need to get tweaked, and I think that that's pretty usual. We did make some changes at the meeting on Monday where we freed up some cash, about maybe like maybe $150,000 of things that were going to be committed. So I think the net effect of that is that we should have $35K around to fund this without, throwing the budget completely out of balance. But obviously that's up to the board to decide, and for the finance director to, make sure that it works. But I CC'd you on the request.
Thank you for that.
And I apologize because I wasn't at the meeting in July, and I wasn't aware of the $35,000 ask and specifically what it was for. So my apologies on that.
No, I appreciate you following up, and Tracy, I appreciate you bringing it up. That segues nicely into the grants, because one of the grants we were requesting was for similar amenities. And so, Allison, have those been submitted, or is there still work left to do on submitting those?
Yeah, the grants have been submitted. I don't know exactly what the due date for their award is off the top of my head, but they've been submitted as of last Friday was the due date to have all the packets in.
Okay. I mean, is there usually a long turnaround on these? I mean, is it half a year, or are these pretty quick?
These are a little bit newer, so it seems like some of the grant cycles have become tighter for award, and it's not like 6 months out. It seems like the trend is where these grants are just getting turned around quicker. I also would like to thank Kate for helping wrangle some support letters for a different grant that I'm working on for some outdoor classrooms in Community Park, which I'm super excited about. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. If you could pull that off, that would be neat. Okay, that's a update. And then Kate, please remind me, there was one more update that we'd requested.
Yeah, the CAPS trail walk process.
Oh yeah. So that email completely fell through my filter. I finally caught it today as I was going through all my emails. So I don't know how much I can bring the group up on this. I guess I just need to go read the email.
We do have 2 volunteers that I'm aware of already from OSAC. I mean, of course, more are welcome to join. But we did have people respond that were interested for that process. And so one was a new member.
Oh, fantastic. Awesome. So it's currently calling the Superior Art Path, name and branding to be determined. We'll develop sorry, the Zoom is blocking my email here. Here we go. Develop walking and biking paths through Superior that employs art and creativity to make social and physical connections across neighborhoods and among parks, town facilities, downtown, and other amenities. So it sounds cool.
And it does say that the meeting will be about an hour and a half on Zoom. And then it goes on to say they expect this part of the project will take about 3 meetings from the first orientation meeting to 2 follow-up meetings. So there's a few. It doesn't sound like it's just a couple.
Okay.
I
So
assume it's the same process that we followed with Orman Roche with CAPS, but I want to make a plug for it that it's pretty fun if anyone is interested in art. They have money to burn, and it's really cool to see all the local artists and the ideas that they have and work with a different committee if you have the time.
I put myself out there for the for certain times. Whether or not they choose that, I don't know, but I'll be doing it if it works.
Okay.
Sounds like fun. So I volunteered as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Tracy. Yeah, it sounds, I mean, it's been fun to see all the stuff that CAPS has been doing show up, right? Purple Park was really cool. It's been fun to come around corners on trails and run into these giant groundhogs that are sitting out on the trails. It's been really cool.
Prairie dogs.
Sorry, prairie dogs. Thank you.
The groundhogs are in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. I have pictures of myself next to them. My mother graduated from there, so I can bring those tomorrow evening. I can show them around.
I think I get that wrong every meeting. It must just be the end of a meeting kind of brain fog. I don't know, but thanks for the correction. Okay, so looking forward to that. And that actually segues us extremely well into the first standing update, which is the Orman Roach Trailhead, including the CAP subcommittee.
Yeah, just a quick update there. There was a meeting end of September where the 2 finalists or the artists were invited for a site visit. I couldn't be there because this meeting was announced the day before the meeting, which was a little bit short. So basically that the artists get a chance to see the site and to be thinking about their creativity, what to do. That's the latest I heard. And I guess they now have a certain timeline, probably end of October, early November, to present something to the committee.
Can you refresh our memory? Is it they've narrowed it down to a few artists and they will pick one?
Yeah, two. There was one piece of artwork potentially as a purchase, but that would have been only if the 2 artists who make a creative new custom type of art would not come up with something what the committee likes.
Okay. Well, it's exciting. I mean, there's a chance to have a great piece of art there, and then also budget to start building out that trailhead more. So we, I don't know how busy we'll be with Orman Roche, but the town may be busy installing new things over there next year. So that's exciting. Rocky Mountain Greenway and Rocky Flats, Joel, you got anything for us?
Not much this month. The meeting for the Rocky Flats Stewardship Council took place on the 5th of October, I believe. As of an hour ago, the notes had not been posted up on the website to see what the meeting notes have. I'll keep an eye out for those and email and distribute them whenever I receive them.
Okay, thank you. The next item is the Raptor program. I think we got a fantastic update on the Raptor program at the beginning. So
Yeah, I don't have anything
probably
else to add,
should have
though.
removed that. Yeah, we got some work to do there, but some exciting work, so that's good. Oil and gas, this was Marcy's area that she focused on bringing updates. I guess the thing here is this something we want to keep on our standing updates of keeping an eye out for oil and gas issues that are happening within the state and bringing them up, or we could assign someone to do a little bit of research before the meeting? I mean, I think maybe that goes back to, do we put that on our work plan for next year, that it's something we want to keep an eye on? We added it last year because of the scare that we had in Superior, pretty much right about the time we were putting together the work plan for this year. Oh, gosh, or was it even a year before?
It was
Anyway,
2 years ago before the election.
Yeah, okay. So, but that's what prompted this. I mean, in terms of open space, I just don't know, right? The new legislation seems like it's making this harder, but it seems like things are changing can change quickly here. So how about we just do that? Let's decide what we do with it on our work plan, and then we'll decide where it needs to fit on the standing updates. And then Joel, also the soft shoulder trail project. It's a lot to say at the end of a meeting.
Yeah. So this fell off my radar. I reached out to Dan, but not until late this afternoon when I, got through into my work day and realized we had OSAC today. So I've not heard back from Dan, but that's my fault, not his. I did pull a couple things off of ProStack's meeting notes. They have been looking at some potential places to build I can't say it either. What Ryan said a second ago. And they in there, I think it was 2 meeting notes ago, they're talking about cost. If you put a 2-foot wide jogging path next to a sidewalk, kind of what we've talked about, not making a only soft shoulder path, but making a soft shoulder path adjacent to a concrete trail. It's just above $4 a square foot, and there's some discussion in their notes about soft surface trail through Autry Park, in addition to the hard surface trail that's going in around the pickleball courts that we kind of voted on the alignment of a few meetings back. And then the other thing that I took out of their meeting notes was the trail grants that we discussed a minute ago, and if those trail grants are successful, potential for some soft shoulder trail construction at some point.
Did they, I have to do the math, but how wide? So it's $4 a square foot, and how wide are they? They're 3 foot or
2 foot wide general.
2 foot wide. So we're talking $8 a foot. It says to add it next to the trail.
In here, it's 0.6 of a mile, so just a little over half a mile, roughly $25,000. So that's a ballpark for you.
Okay.
Now, the one thing that they pointed out that I should mention as well is that the irrigation for the grass that's next to the concrete trails is usually right up against that, and so there may be some irrigation line mitigation or altering of plans and things like that. But I'm happy to see this at least progressing, and I know we don't have the budget for it this year, may not have a budget for it next year, but I think if you look around when you are out and about, you can see it in CenturyLink, you can see it even in the town, with so many people out, so many people looking for a little extra distance or space during this pandemic. There's a lot of social trails that have popped up, and thanks to the drought and hot, dry weather we had this summer, they've really burned in. And so in all my years, I've never seen so many really well traffic established social trails that have popped up. And I think that some of that is due to people trying to get off of the concrete paths and kind of space out.
Yeah, I agree. The interesting thing about that project is it can be done in phases, right? Year over year, to keep adding more and more as budget becomes available.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I think you could certainly see it as a vision. I've talked about. I'd love to see like soft surface trails between the 2 schools and community park as a starting point. And there was some other discussion that I haven't gotten to watch all of the ProStack meetings, but there's some other discussions about trying to continue the soft surface trail that runs on the east side of McCaslin. It essentially starts across this, where the stoplight is on McCaslin, going south towards Colton, that goes up to the apartment complex on the west side. There's a soft surface gravel trail running there all the way to Colton, and then some of the discussion from ProStack was possibility of getting the east side of McCaslin soft surface trail prioritized. So,
okay. Well, there's movement. Joel, I think ever since I've been on the committee, we've been tossing this idea around, and it always seemed to fall off the bottom of the stack, but it doesn't. It seems like that's changing, which is good.
Yeah, I'm really pleased to see that ProStack and Dan have kind of championed this, because it's near and dear to me. I mean, I prefer soft shoulder for everything: hiking, biking, walking my dog, and I think a lot of people do too. And I understand the town's desire for compliancy with ADA and things like that, and maintenance, and being able to scrape with this the snow plows and things like that, and all those are great. I just continue to advocate for a mix of soft and hard surface trails.
100% with you.
Yeah, I'm with you too. My knees will will definitely thank you as like you continue to run, your body gets older. All that concrete, it hurts. Okay, well, that is the end of the standing updates. So our meeting is adjourned. It is now 7:45. So we will adjourn the meeting, and Tracy and Kara, you survived your first meeting. So hopefully it wasn't too much and too fast, but please reach out if you have questions about things you heard or you didn't understand. Be glad to help fill you in any way we can.
Really appreciate the background. It was very interesting to hear what's going on, and I look forward to meeting you all tomorrow.
Yes, looking forward to tomorrow. So see y'all soon. All right. Well, good night, everyone. See ya.
Bye.